In this video, I'll be talking a little bit about my content creation journey from before I started publishing things to now. And this will give us a bit of context for some shifts I'm doing to some of my goals. And we'll also talk about this concept of elusive clarity, or basically a lot of my content creation journey was centered around my general philosophy, we could say, like a lot, like kind of how all the different main concepts I care about are linked together. And so kind of clarifying this bundle ever more, and it keeps getting clearer and clearer, but it makes some of the older version obsolete, and it's a never-ending cycle. So that's been kind of a general trend or theme is in my content creation journey. So basically, probably be interesting to people who are either interested to see kind of one example of someone going through this process, or interested in, for some reason, my process. Yeah, it'll be pretty off the cuff and probably a little long. I tend to be a pretty private person. I like when I'm working on stuff, when it's in progress, I kind of like to keep it to myself. It's stressful, I feel, to have people kind of, being watching you where you're still figuring stuff out. There is this concept in some spaces. It's called, working with a garage door open, and also learn in public. I mean, to an extent, I'm kind of doing that, but not working with a garage door open. But I don't mind afterwards, kind of explaining my process, and I think it's helpful. I know that I found it interesting when I'm on the receiving end, and I've already know at least one person that found some of my ramblings on these topics interesting. So it's also been 6 videos since my last YouTube journey log. So I thought I'd do this. Plus, it's kind of been going on my mind. So it seems like it's a good time to talk about this. So I guess I'll just start with a general history of my content creation journey. And I think, well, I'll choose for a starting point the summer of 2020 or 2020. So to give some, if you're bad with dates like me, or it doesn't, you don't visualize them very well, it's a little bit after the first pandemic, or the first bout of the pandemics, and some series of lockdowns now. It probably depends on which country you're in. So, but anyways, and so in this period in my life, I had some pretty big second guessing, or you could say like kind of an existential crisis a little bit, and of what I thought I wanted to do turned out not to really work out. And so I was kind of at a loss and trying to figure out what I should be doing with my life, professionally mainly, but it was kind of yeah, putting into question a lot of things in the way I viewed where I was going. And in this process, I started being more invested. I was always interested in self-knowledge and psychology. I was already a little bit interested in those topics, but I got really more invested in those because I was trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. And so at least for my brain, I feel like understanding myself better can give me a better idea of where I'm supposed to go. I think that's usually helpful, especially for if you're the type of audience that probably will end up gathering around this channel, which is pretty introspective, or people who like to overthink about things. So anyway, so that's when I started getting actively into self-knowledge, and through this, I kind of figured I got the idea for a blog because I was interested. I already had a lot of ideas, and I was interested in sharing them, but I never had. And I also liked writing, but for some reason, I never put two and two together and had the idea to do a blog. However, I actually built like a website, but I never published it. It was a little bit all over the place, and so I kind of gave up. But it did lay some founding ideas. It was a good learning experience nonetheless, and I even recycled some of the design choices from that first version to my current website. So 1 year afterwards, in 2021, I'm skipping a lot of stuff, but I have to try and stay somewhat streamlined, or we'll never finish this video. But yeah, so 1 year later, in summer of 2021, I discovered personal knowledge management and the software Obsidian. There's a lot I have to say about this topic, and I'll make videos describing what it is and why you should probably start your own personal knowledge system management system rather. But the idea is basically, if I just like really simplify it, so it's about managing your information, your knowledge, and avoid wasting it. There's lots to say, but think about it. At least for Obsidian, it's a software where you can kind of host your own personal Wikipedia. So you've got a lot of notes and you can link between them. Now it's all in local on your computer, but the idea is that it helps you kind of write down specific ideas. Even if it's not perfect, it's still like a real boost to put it to externalize it, and then you can link them to other notes, and then you get this pretty clear understanding of all different ideas, how they relate, and you find like themes. Anyway, it's got a lot of benefits, but I can't talk about it for too long. We've got to keep going forward. But anyway, that was a big boost because I could start all these ideas in your head. It's kind of hard to see, the broader picture, and when you've got nothing concrete. So when you start compiling it into notes and working on it, and then new layers and improvements and interconnection, and then you discover new stuff and you add it really builds up. It's really a good tool, not only for organizing your general thoughts or just like ideas, but also to understand yourself better, because you can also write down ideas about you. So for example, your values or stuff you struggle with, and blah blah blah. I'll also cover these topics later, but it's really helpful. So if you never heard about it, check it out. Anyway, so moving on to 2023. So that's now 3 years after the initial start of my first blog, or that never saw the light of day, and a little less than 2 years after my discovery of Obsidian, I've now accumulated a decent amount of ideas that I've written down. And so in February 2023, so at the beginning of the year, I have also, in the span of time between 2021 and 2023, I started working with a coach. And so through my thinking and some of our exchanges, we came up with this central concept that kind of that seemed to be pretty related to some of my general philosophy. So at the time, it was called rigorous subjectivity. Now this term has become obsolete because I've got better ways to describe it. And part of what I'm doing this video is to say that basically I've been trying, and that's what has been pushing this whole project, to write down, like compress all my, or the core of my philosophy and my general ideas, and how the core of the system. Because I think it's a good, or at least I find it interesting as a way to contextualize the rest of the content I do. You kind of feel how it fits into the general system, but it's not ready yet, right? I mean, basically that's kind of the whole story I'm spoiling, but I keep working on it and refining it and all, but it's never finished. So I won't get into the super specifics, and technically it's still not finished, and I've got new ideas, but I don't want to. I want to make sure it's baked enough, so to say, before I start going into the details. But anyway, at that point, this general idea, it probably doesn't mean much to you, but seemed to be pretty core. And what I discovered was that it tied so many different notes in my Obsidian note system, and that's another reason why it's good to have these. But basically, I just like it seemed to be kind of a kernel, or like a central concept that tied everything together. And so I was pretty inspired, and this led me to create the initial outlines for 4 posts that I intended to do a 4-post series that kind of explain my general philosophy, each kind of centered on a different layer, we can say. And yeah, so that was the first. At this point, it still wasn't exactly the idea of creating the blog. Well, actually, yeah, the idea was to start the blog and to publish these 4 posts. That would be the first post I'd ever write. And so I was kind of struggling at that point, and also through doing researches to kind of fill in or flesh out better some of these ideas into the post. That's where I discovered a lot of the concepts I'm now talking about, or not necessarily that I already had a lot of the similar ideas, but I found some of the schools of thought, so including the ones I talk into my kind of philosophical series. So Pyrrhonism was a philosophical skepticism. I kind of already agreed with them, but I didn't know that it was a thing, and I didn't know I didn't have a as well fleshed out system that Munchausen trilemma, so that was interesting. I also discovered perspectivism. Similarly, I already kind of share that point of view, but I didn't know that it was I didn't know it was a name, and I didn't know as many connected concepts. And also existentialism. Now, I already knew about existentialism because it's pretty famous, but I saw that was, or it became even more relevant how it was connected to my way of thinking. So that, I'm starting those first drafts, and so in by the time of May, I kind of had some of the two first posts. I had the drafts, and so I wanted to get some feedback before I start just publishing it on the web. And so I sent them for feedback with my coach. And the thing is, it wasn't quite as ready. So I got a lot of feedback. It needed a lot more work. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to shift to another post to, because basically if I want to start a blog, I need to at least have one post to get, the thing moving on. And then I need to publish with some level of frequency or, like every so often. So I decided, okay, I'm going to shift those, main posts for a bit later. I'm going to work on the background, and then for the first post that I'm going to publish, I'll start with my posts on empathic inquiry. Actually, there are two. I think this was supposed to just be one post initially, but then I jammed way too much ideas in there, and so it became a two-post series. But anyway, so I started working on that, and then at the same time, I started working on the actual blog itself, as in the design and development, and I did most of that in May. And so then I keep working on that. In the background, I was working on my, my main manifesto series, and I was also working on the empathic inquiry posts. And so by the time we get to July 2023, that's when I first published the blog with the first post that's on empathic inquiry. And I'm still working on the background. And then by autumn of 2023, we are now shifting basically based on the feedbacks I got. We decided that basically I had put a lot of work into the drafts, but it'd probably be better to get feedback on a less, on a more higher view, so outlines instead of complete sentences, which is quicker also. On my end, I don't have to write the entire draft before I get some feedback. So now it's outlines, and they've ballooned out of proportion like it tends to, or at least in my experience, it's always longer than you think. So now what initially was 4 posts is now 6 posts, and it's kind of a new updated version, but it's still not quite done, so we keep working and back and forth. And in December, I had a bit of a big epiphany, or I've been having, since even before 2020, but you discovering new things, and because I'm pretty interested in self-development, personal development, and self-knowledge, and understanding myself better, I already had like lots of new discoveries and stuff. But in December, I realized that I had the fearful avoidant attachment style, and probably for some people maybe it wouldn't be as important, but somehow for me it was kind of an important puzzle piece that kind of tied a lot of things together and explained some of my earlier experiences in my childhood, and kind of connected it to a lot of my personality, how it impacts on my behavior and stuff I care about. And it kind of on the other hand, I was also discovering ethical marketing with Todd Hargrave's content and George Kau's content. And that was also very helpful. I was always lukewarm, or no, actually that's being mild. I was always kind of repulsed. That sounds a little hard, but I didn't feel at ease with the idea of entrepreneurship, and especially marketing, which always felt very kind of scummy and really against my way of doing things, very unauthentic basically, and that I didn't like that at all. But with the idea of ethical marketing, or the possibilities and new ways to do marketing that are fine. I mean, technically me doing this video is a form of marketing, but I'm just like, I'm broadcasting my message, and if people enjoy it, or to some extent, now they know I exist, and if later on I do content or offers, or paid offers rather, they might end up buying them, whatever. So, but in my opinion, that's fine. That's authentic. There's no manipulation or anything. So I was discovering this kind of combination between understanding myself and like a lot of my journey better, and then finding this new idea of like the potential to do a business in a way that doesn't feel icky to me, with a lot of cool ideas and concepts by these two authors. And so it kind of melded into some new epiphanies onto what I wanted to do and the specific audience I wanted to help. Before, I just wanted, my main motivation for the blog was that I had a lot of ideas and I wanted to kind of share them instead of let them kind of rot inside my head to an extent. Well, I mean, that's a little hyperbolic, but I mean, like if I'm not doing anything with them, what's kind of the point? I mean, it's interesting for me, but but now with this new perspective, it was more centered into building a business and maybe doing this for a living. So not just a blog, but content creation on one end to kind of share my ideas and kind of build a community on the long term, and also later on then maybe combine it into, well, I'll transform it into a business, not by selling the content or through advertising, but more by services. So by working with these people, with this type of people, to help them with some of their issue. Again, I'm not going to get into the super specifics because I understand it's still in progress. Unfortunately, that's kind of the conclusion of the video. It's never over, but I guess it takes time. So anyways, moving on to 2024, I've got these big epiphanies, and yeah, so we decide. So I've been working on my series, right, on these kind of this manifesto series for a long time now. It's been like well, about 1 year, and I've been having back and forths with my coach. And so we decide finally, or at least based on our interaction, there's still some stuff missing, and so it goes to the idea of simplifying again. Instead of having these 6 outlines, we're going to move to a general, like a one outline for my general philosophy, and it's pretty compressed. So that becomes a new project, and so all of this work is being done in the background of my other, at this point I was only doing the blog, but of my other publications. And then in my now page on the blog, I had written that I did intend to write my manifesto, to publish my manifesto series, I think by the end of 2023, or at least the first post. That didn't happen. So in 2024, I said, okay, now I'll publish something in the first semester, and I'm going to fail this this deadline again. So anyway, so in January we moved to this like just simpler one outline for the general syllogism of my manifesto, so to speak. And then in February, also I was inspired by some of the content of Todd Hargrave in particular, and this idea of doing an intro workshop. And this whole idea of me, what this like kind of condensing my philosophy, it would correspond to his concept of point of view marketing, where basically part of marketing, well, I'm not going to get into all the details of his things, of his model, otherwise we'll never end, but part of how you marketing is by kind of explaining your point of view on how the specific issues you're talking about work, and depending on if people kind of vibe with that specific point of view, then they want to work with you or not. Anyways, so that's what I had been doing, unbeknownst to me, or at least unbeknownst, that without having the specific label, for a long time. And he has this idea of an intro workshop where basically you kind of do a 1 hour presentation where you present the gist of your point of view. And so that also inspired me, and I started working on another outline for that, or because yeah, something that's a little bit more focused on solving specific issues. So in my case, I think that's clear enough that I can kind of explain, but my goal is to help people who are very kind of waver, they're on an existential level. They can tend to second guess themselves a lot, and they're pretty aware of existential uncertainty, and and have a hard time finding like a strong connection to meaning and some direction in life. Things I've been through to myself. And so part of my philosophy and all is about helping. How do we find some direction? How do we kind of find some meaning and purpose in spite of all this uncertainty? That's the general through line. And so the start here or intro workshop. That's kind of sorry, I'm using the terms interchangeably, but that's the same idea. Just kind of the like an introduction to the manifesto or point of view, and it's more targeted to people who are trying to get help with a specific situation instead of being completely theoretical, which was my first approach. So that's kind of the difference. But anyway, so I'm working on that too, and maybe I'm thinking now maybe I'll start focusing on that instead. So making a presentation because it's easier to tweak and improve with based on feedback instead of trying to write my final. Uh, but frankly, with the lengths, if I did those 6 posts, it'd basically be a small book. So maybe I was too ambitious from the start to think I could get started with that when it's more like an end product. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. So anyway, so I'm keeping doing my work and engaging with more of this ethical marketing ideas. And so in April, I finally got inspired. Well, it had been a project I had for a long time, but to do this YouTube channel with this whole idea of kind of lowering my standards because, again, a recurring problem I have is a perfectionism, and part of it is this kind of gigantism of expectations, or like I have to do the best thing ever. I need to start with the best thing ever. Oh, I mean, I don't view it as the best thing ever, but basically, I'm, like I said, super unrealistic goals as the first step. So never this thing ever happens, and it's overwhelming. But so I decided, if I kind of simplify the content, so in this case, I mean, I'm still overdoing what I'm supposed to do according to the system I was inspired by, because I'm still spent 4 to 5 hours per video on average, which is, I should do less, but it's a good middle ground for me, and I can do one video a week. And then in parallel of this YouTube video and still doing posts, so starting from 2024, I've been doing weekly, not weekly, monthly posts, but before that it was a little bit less. Anyway, that's been going on the side. After this whole idea, so we're going back to the main manifesto series, right? So now we're to the one outline for the shortened, just like the core of the philosophical syllogism, and that was again too long and too complicated, so or too unclear, too easy to not know exactly what the heart of it was. So move back one step back again, and this time it's about finding kind of my core audience. So who am I trying to help? So I kind of explained that to an extent, but not the best way. There'll be a better version. This is a work in progress version, as I said. So yeah, the core audience that I'm trying to target or help, my core message, and that led me to, I mean, again, that's not the finalized version, but another theme is this whole idea of handling internal and external dissent and learning to grow comfortable with it instead of seeing it as an obstacle to progress or peaceful, harmonious coexistence within yourself with other people. You can actually use dissent and opposing views to actually build productive things. So that came from that work in part, and I mentioned that in my perspective, in my video on perspectivism. And so we arrived to now, so June 2024. And again, through the exchanges, the core audience message and justification for the message, still too vague or still too much uncertainty. So now it's going back to the core objective, like what's my source of motivation and energy, what's like what I really care about if I really have to simplify it to the most essential part. So now that's the current stage I'm in. So I feel like I've delineated what that is, but I have to see, every time I feel like we're finally, I didn't mention that in the story, but every time I think like, okay, I finally got this. We've gone through the back and forth. I've incorporated some feedback, and all. Now we're finally going to be able to finish and publish this whole thing. That's when that's when I get a nope, and we have to go one step back and start all over again. And that ties into this general idea of elusive clarity. And there's another idea too of clarity comes from publishing content. Basically, you don't exactly have full clarity, and you start expressing yourself, and through expression, through having the fact that you're forcing yourself to kind of condense it into something that's somewhat understandable by someone else, and also the in retrospect, like in hindsight, you can look at all the content you've done and you learn new things about your general view. So that's definitely true that clarity comes with creation. Like I got a lot of clarity from all the blog posts and videos I've been doing since then. But yeah, it feels like it never finishes. So, there's like some matter or some related concept that come to mind is, Sisyphus, the myth of Sisyphus, who's always pushing his boulder up the hill, and every time he reaches the top, it goes back down, and he's got to start again, which is pretty apropos because I'll be mentioning it in my next video on existentialism. I don't know if it will be the next video. It's coming sometime soonish. I don't know exactly when, but I'll be mentioning it there. And then also the meme from Mario about, thanks Mario, but our princess is in another castle. We've got to start over and over again. So yeah, that's kind of how I've been feeling. And I guess part of the frustration, well, I guess I put some undue expectations that I wanted to publish all of this manifesto stuff early, and then I kept kind of moving the deadline. But it's been taking a lot of energy and work and time in the background. And although technically it's not like a lot of people engage with my content at the moment, whether it's be the YouTube channel or the blog. So, and probably, I don't know, like a few people might have read the Now page where I made my commitments about publishing something by the middle of the year. But basically, I'm letting go of that now because, like, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we're finally arrived toward the end and now I can start building, but I don't trust it anymore, and I'm giving up altogether the deadline. I'm still going to be working on it, but I don't promise to publish at any point. I'll be a little bit looser. And so, yeah, I guess like I'll still be publishing content. It'll just be, different ideas. It'll be a little less maybe well-rounded or, interconnected for the moment. But yeah, I guess that will have to come later. And yeah, it also ties with another concept I'll probably make a full video on, which I call the exhaustivity fallacy, which it's kind of tied to perfectionism. It's kind of I don't know if you know lean startup model, but basically the idea of the lean methodology is you start with very small tests that work, that are complete, and then you test if people are interested, and then you keep growing upon it. And the exhaustivity fallacy is doing the exact opposite. Instead, one of the example for lean, the lean model is you start with if you want to do a car, you start with a scooter, and then you do a motorcycle, and then you do the car. You do like smaller versions, iterations. Okay, but with the exhaustivity fallacy, it's like you try to do a rocket first. That's like, and then if you do anything less, you'll be disappointed. And so it's just like building this ginormous mountain of stuff you have to do before you even start, and it's never over. And plus all this artificial pressure, because as I said, most people don't really follow my stuff, so it's not like, I don't think there's any single person out there that's like waiting and being like, hey Arthur, where is the next post? So at the end of the day, it's not like it's a big deal. But yeah, I'm letting go of trying to give a specific deadline. I guess I'll also probably link this in my Now page to explain a little bit of why I'm changing my goals, and also give a little bit of a little bit of history on before the blog, because since then I've been explaining a little bit what I do every month, so you can find that, but there wasn't the context of what happened before that. And I'll just end the video with a couple of lessons I've learned since my last with the last 6 videos I posted. So I already knew some of them. The number of views you get on a video are pretty surprising, or like how well the video performs is somewhat surprising. Yeah, it's not particularly related to the amount of effort you put into it or how good you think it is. And I knew this, I had been told this, but it still surprised me to an extent. I think now it's only based on 2 videos, but on my 2 videos that did the best were about determinism and this kind of existential impact it has, and then can we have any certainty with Pyrrhonism. So I feel like it's maybe like the most attention drawing topics are those that have this kind of, that are philosophical but tied to something pretty visceral, and maybe some, I've mentioned some of my other videos are also about philosophical topics, most of them to an extent. Those are less visceral. I don't know. That's my pattern for the moment, but I shouldn't trust that too much either, I think. Plus, it's like I've only published like a bit more, like a dozen of videos so far. Anyways, I've also been moving away from doing 2 takes and then keeping the last one. I'm doing a bit more of single cuts now. It's just that if I mess up something, I'll do it again and then I'll just do a little bit more cuts in the editing. And it's been working decently, I guess. Yeah, I've also noticed that the light has a big impact on the image quality. Again, this is a very well-known thing. Everybody will tell you that if you go, if you read or listen to the first advice on filming, it'll be, oh, the light is the most important thing. But yeah, I didn't realize how much it affected the image quality. Like basically with lower light, the image gets, well, at least with this not great camera I'm using, but it gets super pixelated and like murky. So yeah, so light is more important than I thought. And I think even with a good light though, the camera is not that great. I'm mostly, when I'm watching those videos, it's mostly on small screens, but I think it's supposed to be 1080p, but when you look on a big screen, it's not that good, but whatever. It'll have to do for the moment. I've also been experimenting with using slides instead of just, these videos where I'm talking to the camera and sometimes use a whiteboard. And it's interesting. I think the benefits are I've got a bit more preparation and structure to help me. It's a little bit less loosey-goosey like this video. This video is very loosey-goosey. And so I've got a bit more support on my end. And then visually for the person that's watching the video, is there a little bit more context and it's easier to view things, especially if you're watching on a small screen instead of like this cramped whiteboard. But on the downside, it takes a lot more time. And one thing well, it's not the first time I've been doing slides presentations, but repetition is really key in order to get them good. Like I really need to do them over and over and over and then see like, oh, this isn't really working that good and tweak it. And yeah, so it's a lot of time. I've also gotten my first 10 subscribers. Technically, it's only 9 because one of my subscribers is my own other channel I use for consuming content. But thanks to the people that are interested and following me and showing support. And yeah, I think that's it for this time. I hope this was somewhat interesting. I know it was a little bit all over the place. These video logs are a bit of a brain dump. So yeah, not the most organized, but hopefully somewhat interesting maybe for some people. And yep, see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.